Welcome back. My name is Dean. Good to be here. Nice to see you. As always, brought to you by our friends at fieldtriphealth.ca. Psychedelic assisted therapy for people who truly need it. Get better faster. Sometimes people with ketamine assisted therapy, specifically ketamine assisted psychotherapy, get better within hours and they stay better 4 months with no SSRIs. Listen, your mental health is a very important deal. My mental health is important to me. Your mental health is important to me. And I want to share with you the good news is that psychedelic assisted therapy is legal in Canada, and the industry leaders, brand leaders, people that I trust the most for medically assisted ketamine assisted therapy, my friends at Field Trip Health. Go to fieldtriphealth.ca, fieldtriphealth.ca, and check them out. They could be in your province, and you could be getting better right now. And they've got at-home ketamine-assisted therapy as well. It is legal. It is supervised. It is therapeutic. It gets to the business of getting through your trauma so you can get better and have an incredible experience doing it. It is for the courageous. Help yourself get better, stay better, faster with our friends at fieldtriphealth.ca. Well, I don't talk about Ontario politics very much. It's the province I live in. It's in the country I love, Canada, nobody's state. And in Canada, we've got a bunch of provinces and territories. If you're listening in the United States, we have a significant audience in the United States. We work the same way you work. You have states, we have provinces and territories. All the same thing. Part of the federation of this beautiful country I like call Canada. It's home. I live here. And we have several provinces that have some derelict leaders, if you will, corrupt leaders, depending on what newspaper you read. Alberta, they're going through their thing right now. Massive corruption scandal with sole source contracts and insider trading and cronyism. And it is no different in the province of Ontario. We are led by a gentleman named Doug Ford, who is currently under RCMP investigation, along with his entire party, has been for a couple of years now, due to giving away some protected lands to his donor buddies, a few other, quid pro quos. And corruption is just part of the game when it comes to politics. I know that, but in Ontario, it is no better or no worse. He called a snap election. We're having that tomorrow. And I feel it's important to tell people why you should maybe reconsider who you're voting for if you voted for the Conservative Party or the Progressive Conservative Party here in Canada over the last. And I don't do this. I don't do political conversations, but I felt it was really important to do it because there's extreme human need in the province that I live in, that I love, the province of Ontario. And that human need has been caused by a disaster at Doug Ford's making. Doug Ford, the premier, his Progressive Conservative Party is the party in question. And we've got some things to talk about. And I wanted to bring in someone who really does fight for the people, someone who fights for workers, someone who understands the plight of having to stick together to fight back against elites, having to stick together to ask for, what is just common sense, which is to be treated with respect and dignity in this province and to earn a living wage. And my next guest is no stranger to advocating, no stranger as a worker. She was one, she is one, and she's incredibly humble, even though she's the president of the Ontario Labor Federation, the province and the country's largest labor federation. Please welcome to the program the president of OLF, Laura Walton, ladies and gentlemen. Miss Walton, welcome to the program. Nice to see you.
Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really, really good. You know what I love? I love anybody that'll rock a turtleneck in late February.
Thank you. Well, listen,
right?
It's about keeping warm. Been out on the doors, snap election, let's go trudging in the snow. And so it's all about warmth these days.
Yeah, is that what you're doing right now? Most of your days is spent, advocating or canvassing for political friendlies, political colleagues that are trying to give Ontario workers a fair shake. Is that the deal?
I decided this time, there's a lot of election financing laws, which were put into place by Ford. And so I took the entire month of vacation, the entire election period. I took a personal vacation, so that I could legally get out and be talking to every single person that I could be talking to, whether that was in person or on phones, just getting out there, talking to people and, making sure that when people, they were using their right to vote, because that's really, really important. People actually need to use it, but that they're voting in their best interest and having those conversations about what does that look like.
Interesting. So you had to take a month off your work according to election finance laws?
Yeah.
You had to burn vacation to go door to door to try to save
Listen,
the
I don't see
province.
it as burning vacation. I think, it's like if he thinks I wouldn't do it, then it's foolish of him to think that way.
Yeah. He's no stranger to not liking unions. OLF is the biggest, the best, and full of really wonderful people that advocate for workers. I want to get to that in Doug Ford's anti-union stuff. I want to get to a bunch of stuff today, but let's start with this, Laura. Let's start with why Doug Ford called a snap election like months and months in
Listen,
advance.
I honestly believe that if we had just a normal election, he would have lost. He had to call a snap election because there was too many things on the radar that were going to ruin his chances of continuing. So you've got a situation where things are just not going well in the province of Ontario. People are starting to see that. People are seeing that after 7 years of Ford, we are actually further behind than we were when he came into office. There's a pending RCMP investigation. He wants to be famous, but he's now infamous. The first premier in Ontario to be under an RCMP investigation. You've got, he wanted to use this tariff thing to his own advantage, which is really funny because in 2018, he handed tariffs and the whole dealing of tariffs off to the feds where it rightly belongs. But he wanted to play Captain Canada on that. And I think, the little house of cards that he had built was starting to get a bit shaky. But he knew that if he could call a snap election, if he could call it in the middle of February, where February is just, let's be honest, it's a crap month in Ontario, right? It's snowy. It's the
Saddest month of the year. Saddest month of the year
and
universally.
it's just a crappy time. And so, and of course, like Mother Nature decided, oh, well, not only is it going to be a snap election, but I'm going to just dump snow on you in unprecedented amounts. And here we are.
Yeah.
And so he literally had to change the playing field in order to ensure his own success. And I think if people in Ontario had more time, I think, maybe we would see a different outcome. I think the outcome's still not going to be what he was hoping. I think he honestly thought, pull the trigger and I'm just going to march in there with, all this. I don't know. There's a lot of ridings that are giving, blue ridings that are, in play right now that I don't think people thought would be in play 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, no, you're right. The heat around him, I don't know if he would have survived until the summer, late summer. I think we're supposed to have an election in June. And the opportunity was too rich for Doug. And if you know Doug, and I'm friends and have been and still am, fortunately friends with a lot of guys that know Doug and still deal with Doug. And one of the things that Doug's really good at is taking advantage of things and people and time, right? And so, it was interesting because a couple of years ago when the Greenbelt scandal, and for everybody listening, Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, co-opted a whole bunch of our protected wetlands, marshlands, and farmland and gave them all to his developer buddies. They then went and borrowed on that after they purchased the land, magically around the same time. Now the RCMP Special Investigations Unit that handles international money laundering is conducting a years-long investigation, and apparently we're going to be getting some news about that late spring, early summer. So to your point, there's that. There's also all of the other stuff, right? And the other stuff is it doesn't just add up. Like it's not just 2.5 million Ontarians that don't have health care. It's not just burnt out nurses whose wages have been capped, who he's fighting back against. It's not just him minimizing sick people in Ontario, telling them to go to the fucking vet, pardon my language, to go get a CAT scan if they can't get in to get one in a year and a half. And then mocking everybody on his way to a $2,000 a plate dinner. It's the people around him too. It's the people that are enabling this. And so, when I talk to people like you, I find it very interesting because you've got a wealth of knowledge and you really do mean what you say. Like you're not a political operative. You work at the Ontario Labor Federation for a reason because you believe in workers' rights. So when you talk to somebody that is a Ford fan, and I'm sure you encounter these people. I'm sure a lot of you.
I represent them.
I'm sure you talk. I know you do. And listen, Labor Federation is a cross section of hundreds of thousands of hardworking individuals that all have different core beliefs and different systems. But what is the message when you talk to somebody who's a big Ford fan that's a union member, and they say something to you along the lines of, Laura, president of OLF, change my mind?
So one of the conversations that I have, and we have a lot of those conversations, is like thinking beyond ourselves. And like right now in Ontario, there is such a horrible scarcity mindset that people have shifted into this space where they're like, okay, what do I need for me? What do I need for my family? And that's it. And so I remind them that, there is a common good that needs to exist within Ontario. And while, it's great that we're seeing investments in buildings, and I want to be very, very clear, I don't think that there's a political party out there that would not be investing in building the infrastructure of Ontario. I want to say that. Like, it's just, it needs to happen.
And it also doesn't matter where you're from, NDP, liberal, whatever. There isn't a political leader or a business person or the leader of an organization or an advocate that doesn't understand the importance of a strong
not a
economy
single one,
as well,
right? They need that. So you've got this situation where people are getting told, oh, listen, I'm going to do this, and so you should vote for me so that, you get jobs. But every single party would have got that. What I keep reminding people is building is only part of the solution. It's building and staffing that we actually need. It's two halves of the whole. And we've got Ford, who does this like divide and conquer technique really, really well. And I keep reminding people that we can do both. We can do both. And you can have all of the hospitals in the world, build them all. They can be top of the line, super great, wonderful buildings. But if you don't have the healthcare workers in there providing the services, you actually don't have healthcare. You can build all the schools in the world, but if you don't actually have education workers and teachers in there, you don't have education. You can build all of the super highways that you want, but if you don't maintain them through staffing, they're all just going to fall apart. And that's actually what we've seen in Ontario. And so I keep talking to people about think beyond what is being promised and how is it going to be executed? Because, I hear about this fantasy tunnel, which you and I are not going to be alive when if and when it ever comes to fruition, right?
Oh, you're talking about the magic longest tunnel in the world that goes underneath
the greatest
the 401,
tunnel ever, right? Like, it's this magical mystery tour that we're having. Like, at the end of the day, okay, great. So you're going to build this. Now, how are you going to maintain it? How are you going to service it? And these are all of the problems that we have in Ontario. And we saw this. We built this beautiful highway called the Highway 407. And rather than invest in the maintenance of that highway, we sold the damn thing off.
To
right?
Spain,
And
by
so
the
like,
way.
I'm like, think about this, people. It's great. We built it. It was lovely. We built it. The jobs were there. We built it. But then we didn't want to continue the investment in it. And now it's gone. And now we don't have that revenue. And so really talking to people about, you want to be able to get healthcare in the very same hospital you build. Ford doesn't care about that. Ford doesn't care if your kids are able to access proper supports at school. Ford doesn't care if you're able to get an MRI or even, heck, a family doctor if you have strep throat. He's blaming people with scraped knees for an ER wait. Like, it's the asinine nature of it all is beyond like comprehension. And he's going to make some transactional promises. And, between you and me, most of those transactional promises, he's probably not even going to be around to execute. And then what? And it's also just not sustainable. Like, we have to build as a province together. And that's going to require everyone, you and me, people who don't agree with me, people who do agree with me. We're going to have to build it together. And divisive nature, that just allows like people like the Mango Menace down to the south thinking that they can come in and make us the 51st state.
I love how you put that, the Mango Menace. I didn't know if you wanted to get into Trump today because we're trying to save on.
He's always just there, isn't he?
Yeah, he's like a bad fart. Like, he just kind of lingers, right? And it's just this constant, steady stream of it every day. And I think Doug Ford kind of knows that. What did you make of his response when, and I mean, he's underwater. He's got the lowest approval rating of any premier in this country, by the way, not named Danielle Smith, who's going through her own stuff, another anti-union, anti-worker, anti-labor person. But what did you make of his whole heel turn? Knowing how much he is open for business, knowing how corrupt his government has been accused of being, knowing that Doug Ford, the only thing that matters to Doug Ford is how much money you have for Doug Ford, how much money you have for Doug Ford's friends, and how you can help Doug Ford stay in power. What did you make of his Captain Canada?
I felt like he traded in that little red shovel for a red cape. And I was like, oh, this is the new cosplay we're doing. Okay, got it. And I think like the thing is Ford is an opportunist. He is going to seize on any freaking opportunity, big or small.
That's all he is, right?
That's all he is.
That's all he is. He's not a conservative. He's just he is a pure, unadulterated, greedy opportunist.
And listen, I grew up in a whole family of conservatives. My riding is blue. Like, I know conservatives. I grew up with them. he's not conservative. He spent more money than the Liberals did. Like, it's just extraordinary, the amount of money that he spent. The difference is you and I have nothing to show for what he spent our money on, right? It's just been like a free-for-all. But I think he's an opportunist. And so when I saw him capture this whole, I'm like, Bud, you're the one who cheered on, Trump becoming president. You're using his language. You're using his tactics. You're using his techniques. I remember 2018 when the tariffs came in and he basically said, oh, well, the feds are going to deal with it. And now suddenly Ontario's going to deal with it. And I think the proof is in the pudding. If he was going to deal with it, get rid of that damn Starlink contract. It was amazing. It was like you could almost see the pressure on him. I'm going to cancel the Starlink contract. I'm not canceling it anymore. And I'm like, okay, so like who got to you, bud? Like who got to you because somebody got to you. And there's a reason why he's flip-flop Ford. That is Ford's nature. If there's enough pressure on him, he will concede and he'll turn it around and he'll play his oh shucks good old boy routine of, gee, I didn't mean to do that. Oops, my bad. And, we're all supposed to just buy it. But you've been in this job for 7 years. Anybody else, if you've been in a job for 7 years and you've been making this many screw ups, you're gone. And what we need to do as the people of Ontario is like, why are we not demanding he be gone? Why are we not like sitting here going, we're not any better off, and we're not any better off because of you. Not because, and the fact that we're still, and they're all teas right now, right? He wants to blame it on Trudeau. His base is saying, oh, well, it wasn't Ford's fault. It was Trudeau's fault. If the guy couldn't stand up for Trudeau, who was on the same side as him, how in the sweet name of God is he going to like stand up to Trump?
He's not. I think that's the whole point, right? I think I think you nailed it. I think, if you look at the Starlink thing is a perfect example. 4 months ago, he can telegraph, maybe it was like 2 months ago, Doug Ford's government telegraphs that his favorite candidate, who did become the president of the United States with the help of Starlink and Elon Musk, signs a for all of you listening, $100 million deal, 100 million of our money, right to Elon Musk, right to Starlink. The second Trump wins. To service 15,000 different rural homes in Ontario that don't have access to the internet. Okay. 15,000. The math on that is staggering. And I'll tell you why it's staggering. Because it costs about $7.5 to $10 million for the hardware, and Starlink for accounts for about 15,000 people. We gave Elon Musk, Doug gave 100 million of our dollars to Elon Musk for the right to play, for the right to do business with the administration, for the right to be associated with Elon Musk. That 90 million, from what I understand, is a pay to play fee. So the second that happens, right, the entire country says, we've got Telsat. Why don't you just use that? It would have come in as a fraction of a cost. Crickets, not a word. But $100 million of ours is now in Elon Musk's pants. Okay. Then all of a sudden, Donald Trump's like, oh, yeah, we're going to tariff the shit out of your entire country. Crickets from Doug. We start a cancel the Starlink campaign, cancel the Starlink contract campaign. It goes viral. Bunch of other people jump on it. He then threatens, the day that Donald Trump says he's going to give us 25% tariffs, threatens to rip it up. He goes, I'm ripping it up. The next day, Donald Trump's like, I'm going to give Canada a month, which, by the way, is all bullshit lip service. There's no memorandum for these tariffs. It's just bullshit. So he goes, I'm going to give him a month. And Doug's like, okay, Starlink's back on. Like, he couldn't wait to tell his masters to the South that, guys, the money's still coming. We're still going to do business with you. All you needed to do was give us a 1 month reprieve, and we're still going to give you that $100 million.
And why did you need a 1 month reprieve? Because that was the election.
Coincides,
and
doesn't it? February 27th.
I have learned in my life that there are very few coincidences, like actual true coincidences. And I think, we need to start looking at these things, and we need to start saying, like, where in the hell is this happening? And so, there's this magical 1 month reprieve, which coincides with our election. We've got the man running down to Washington at the drop of a hat, and nothing's coming of it. Absolutely nothing is coming of it. And, today I'm seeing, he brings Tim Houston into one of his campaign stops. Now Tim Houston is announcing what he's going to do, which is like the bare friggin' minimum. And we're all supposed to go, oh, yay, like, look. And I'm like, no, nobody. The OFL, what we did is as soon as we started to hear about the tariffs, we called on Doug before he even called an election. We said, get together with labor, get together with business, and let's actually talk about what we need to do in Ontario to make it so that these tariffs either A, don't happen, but if they do, what are we going to do collectively to ensure the health of the province? He refused. He didn't even answer. And like, listen,
He didn't get back to you. So the biggest union in the country asks him to help do some planning to be able to blunt the workers, hundreds of thousands
Yeah.
of people
And
in
we
this
had-
country,
and we
province.
said,
Not a word. He's
Not a
like,
word.
whatever.
And then, Flusher, and listen, like I get invited to a lot of things by a lot of people who I don't always necessarily agree with, but I will say this for Trudeau, when he did his economic summit, he had labor there, he had business there. We were all in the same room hearing the exact same thing. And, like it or lump it, and there's a lot of people who say, oh, well, you shouldn't be happy that you were there. And you know what? If you're going to have a conversation about us, it better be with us. And I think that that's the mindset that we need to have. But we don't see Ford doing that, and he won't do that because he is not transparent. And I think people need to get that understanding. The man has hidden everything he's done: mandate letters, cell phone records, you name it. Everything just goes, incognito. And he spends a small ton of cash fighting us, trying to force his transparency. And so, at the end of the day, those who hide nothing have nothing to hide. And those who hide everything, well, those are where the skeletons are.
Yeah, and that's why they take to the Supreme Court to try to prevent people from looking at mandate letters and finances and records, cell phone records from one of his 20 burner phones. And it really is, and I say this with all due respect. He really is like a mob boss. Like he really operates this province as if he is a mob boss, where he takes from people and enriches himself or enriches the people around him. I have a stat sheet I want to go through with you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Laura Walton is our guest. She is the president of the Ontario Labor Federation. This is stunning stuff. This was put out by a reporter named Rebecca Gow. She's terrific at this. Doug Ford's Dirty Dozen: How Ford Spent Ontarians' Tax Dollars and What He Could Have Paid for Instead. Okay. There's 15.5 million people in this province. Cost of an early election, $189 million. That could have bought physicians for 172,000 Ontarians. By the way, 2.5 million Ontarians do not have access to a doctor. So there you go. Moving the Science Center, which was fine. Loved it. No one had a problem with it, but he needed the parking spaces to give to his guys at a spa. That cost $1.4 billion. That's 3,000 affordable housing units he kissed off. Expediting alcohol sales, $612 million. That could have gone to 5,440 public school teachers. That's right. We could have another 5,500 public school teachers with that booze money. And by the way, that was just paying to retrofit like a 7-Eleven so they could fit a bunch of booze in their coolers. It's crazy. Canceling the license plate renewal fee. That cost the province $1.1 billion. Not that I have a problem with not renewing my license, but that you get it. I mean, it's a community, right? Ontario Place redevelopment, $2.24 billion. That could have fixed the entire Gardiner Expressway. Highway 413, this fake highway, $4 billion. Some say that came from COVID because we're missing $4.5 billion somewhere from the COVID stuff. That could have filled the shortfall of public school major repairs. Bike lanes, $48 million. Bill 124, $4.3 million. I want to come back to that in just a second. Government ads, he spent $103.5 million trying to tell everybody that what you see and what he's doing is not what you see, and it is not what he's doing, and that has cost you another $104 million. Gas tax cut, $3.2 billion. Canceled cap and trade program, $3 billion, and of course paying for suspended police officers. That could have trained another 5,300 nurses. $134 million. That's a lot of money. Laura.
It is a lot of money. And so when people are saying to me, Oh, well, how are we going to afford fill in the blank, right? Because whenever you hear about any sort of common good promise that any of the other parties are making, the first thing that you'll hear folks on the right say is, well, we can't afford it. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? The money has always been there. The money has always been there, but it has been literally wasted by this man. And for what? Like, to what end? How are we any better off? How are you and I and our loved ones and our neighbors, how are we any better off after spending this much money, like $15 billion in for what? For what? I can't even figure it out. It's such a big number. It's, the old Austin Powers, Dr. Evil lasers on sharks' foreheads kind of stage, right? It's just so big that people can't even fathom that amount of money. But when you look at it, I'm like, this is why you don't have what you need, because this guy has figured out a way to take the money out of your pocket on one side and then give you a bill for taking that money out of your pocket on the other. And it's beyond.
And you know what he's really good at too, and I'll give him credit as much as I can't stand him, and as corrupt as I believe that man to be. What he's really good at is pardon the language, grin fucking you while he does it. He's really good at that folksy sort of, guys, sorry, I stole $9 billion in land and gave it to my friends. It was an accident. Sorry, guys. And everybody's like,
And he did it in the debate,
right.
and people are like, he did so well. I'm like, yeah, I did it. Then I didn't do it. And then I did it, but I apologized. And I was like, what? Like, you're not my 18-year-old son, bud. Like, you are like, come on.
It's truly, and it's funny because I was watching the end of the debate, and I watched that one clip over and over again because I couldn't quite understand what he was saying. They're like, hey, you stole a bunch of land from the Greenbelt. He goes, I did it, but then I didn't do it, and then I did it, and then I decided not to do it, and yeah, I already apologized for that. And I thought to myself, are we stunning admission, number one, and then just this, like, I was stunned. I'm like, who votes for this guy again? Who does this again? Like, even just watching that, not knowing the numbers, because they obfuscate the numbers, and the media is captured by Doug Ford. We get what the National Post does. He's got a lot of different partners at all the different media outlets. They just keep feeding us the same bullshit all the time, going, Doug's the guy. Brian Lilly is his personal stenographer at the Toronto Sun, and Brian Lilly is living with Doug Ford's comm secretary.
You can't make it up. Like, this is the stuff that sitcoms are made of, right? Like, this is Parks and Recreation in real life. Like, this is where we're at, right? And I think, like, that's what's really important. And I think what people forget is, like, along the way, it's not like this stuff happened and nobody said, no, you shouldn't do this, right? Like, I want to be very, very clear. Bill 124, I can remember sitting in those rooms with their paid lawyers as they're trying to explain to us that they're going to cap the wages of public sector workers. And we were like, you're not going to get away with it. Like, it's going to backfire on you. And he still went ahead and did it. Like, he just had to look at the history books and realize that when the Liberals did it with Bill 115, it ended up really badly. But he didn't do that. He was like, oh, no, I'm just going to do it anyways. And I'm like, my guy, like, what are you doing here? But I think, like, that's what people have to understand, is that, like, it's just a constant flooding of the field of just crap. And what it's done is it's forced people to just get so apathetic and so, like, protective of their own resources, right? I don't really care. I'm healthy. I don't really care. I don't need a family doctor. I don't go to one. It's fine. I don't need one. And I've heard that.
I think there's a mental, like, beating down that's gone on over the past several years, to your point. And I think we're all the same that way, right? Where we'll remove ourselves from social media because we just can't stomach it anymore. We're like, no one's going to do anything about this. Why would I even bother submitting myself to it? So you insulate, to your point. And you've got the fear porn running around with, I'm the only guy in the world that can protect you from tariffs. You need to give me a mandate. Or you got more fear porn running around going, guys, I'm the only guy that can keep food on the shelves. I'm the only guy that's going to do this. The world is coming to an end. He's also very, very good at that in a very folksy way, fear porning people into them going, you know what? If we just keep giving this doofus our agency, we won't have anything to worry about.
And I think, you started saying, like, not talking about politics. Ford has literally made his dynasty off of people not wanting to talk about politics. Because, if we don't talk about it, then we're not actually going to have that, like, oh shit, this doesn't make sense stage. And he is like banking on that. He is banking on people not having conversations around politics. And people need to. Because if you're a conservative, if you come to me and you say, I'm a conservative, and I'll say to you, okay, great, tell me about that. And then I'm going to say, well, then why are you voting for Ford? Because he's not a conservative. Right?
Not at all.
And then I'll say, the next.
Not at all. No, he's an
Right?
assassin. That's all he is. He's a libertarian assassin. Yeah.
I have these conversations, and when somebody says to me, I'm voting for Ford, I'm like, oh, I don't say to them, oh, you idiot, why are you doing that? I'm like, tell me more. Explain to me why. Why are you voting for Ford? And a lot of times when I'm talking to people where they tell me that they're voting for Ford, they're not actually voting for Ford. They're voting because he has led them to believe there is no other choice out there but him. So it's like, I'm not actually voting for him. I'm just voting because he's told me that everybody else is so much scarier. And I'm like, okay, so talk to me about that, right?
Yeah.
Like, these are the things. And a lot of even his platform, which I don't know if you read it yesterday. I was like, well, this is just all.
I think none of it makes any sense. The math doesn't make any sense. Like a $40 billion deficit again next year.
I think what I called it was the all hat, no cattle platform, right? Like a whole lot of talk without a whole lot of substance. But a lot of the stuff in there has been taken from other parties. I'm like, God, you couldn't even do a platform yourself. You had to take.
Maybe they chat GPT.
It's very possible. It is very possible. I actually think there was a point before the election was called that I actually believed that we were living in Ford's fever dream, where he just woke up from a fever dream and was like, oh, a tunnel. That's what I'm going to do. Oh, alcohol in the corner store. That's what I'm going to do. Like, there was no actual rhyme or reason. These were just things that he
very Trumpian.
Oh, very much.
Yeah, very Trumpian. Right, like they're carbon copies. He's a doofusy kind of folksy, beer drinking sort of. Hey boys, he's not like Trump, but he's very Trumpy in the whole. Let's throw a ton of shit against the wall, populist shit against the wall to see what sticks, and I mean a ton of shit. And then let's take off. By the way, he spent 12 days in session last year. He worked for 12 days. Very Trumpy. And he's golfed for something like 14 out of the 30 days he's been in office.
It's completely the way that he works. And I think, we just have to look. And that's the other thing, right? He also had to get this election going before Trump was too far into his 100 days. Right? Because
can we just stop there on that one note for a second? My new friend, Laura Walton,
talk about
president.
Doge?
Yeah. Let's just talk about this for a second. But the Donald Trump, as much of a cretin as he is, and I believe he's the Antichrist, I really do. Not that I believe in religion, but I think pretty sure if it did exist, he's probably the Antichrist. What he has done to guys like Doug Ford, because there's elections tomorrow. The heat on him and the polls that have closed over the past, I would say 7 to 10 days because of Donald Trump, 14 days. Now the people are like, they got their sniffers. Canadians are smart. We got sniffers on them. We're like, oh, that's just fat Trump, right? That's just who we are. And not only that, but what Donald Trump has done to the federal conversation, where yesterday it was announced that Pierre Poilievre, dime store Trump, dollar store Trump, Temu or Wish.com Trump, has been unmasked. And Donald Trump is literally scaring the shit out of Canadians to the point where we're like, we're not going to vote for anybody that smells remotely like that anymore. To your point, they lost a 30-point lead in 6 weeks.
That full body makeover, the Millhouse without glasses, was all for naught. Right? Like, this is what we got. And that's the thing is that it's not sustainable. Like, this stuff is not sustainable. Not being authentic is not a sustainable situation. And, they're elites. And they want you and I to say, oh, no. They're just like us. They're not just like us. They've never been just like us. They've never, ever, ever will be just like us. They live in a world that is not anything. I am never going to live in a world that, Trump and Ford live in. And I'm happy about that. I am quite happy about that. But he has no idea. He has no idea what it's like when you're sitting there looking at your bank account and you're trying to figure out, do you pay rent or do you buy groceries? Or, and now the snowsuit is needed. And it just doesn't even enter into their world. And you see that because Trump and Ford and Pierre, they all do the same kind of thing. These folksy, kind of make you kind of feel good, but really it's going to hurt in the end. It's like a spoonful of medicine with sugar, like it's going to hide the taste, but in the end it's gonna...
But that's been the magic trick, hasn't it, Laura? Like, to me, that's been the magic trick. Like, I watch a guy like Pierre Poilievre. To your point, Donald Trump has done the same thing with maggots down in the United States, maple maggots up here. Some of our poorest, most marginalized, cognitively vulnerable people camping out in ditches to prevent a carbon tax from being instituted because Pierre Poilievre promised his friends at Loblaws that he would try and get the carbon tax removed because it hurts their bottom line. So you literally have some of the poorest people who Pierre Poilievre is going to hurt, who Donald Trump is currently hurting by reducing Medicaid, by getting rid of US aid, the SNAP program, all those things. But he used and utilized and brain effed every single one of those people into thinking, you know what? I need to give this guy all my agency and my vote and my support because they're really good at that. They're really good at attaching, themselves to your core beliefs and then telling the cognitively challenged people, telling fearful people, telling people in religious sects, telling the oligarchy that, hey, listen, come with us. You won't have to worry about anything. It's us versus them. We talked about it prior to this. Actually, great TED talk from a professor named Barbara F. Walter. And you got to watch it. I actually posted it. I'll send it to you when I'm done. She's a Civil War expert, and she's convinced of a civil war because people are waking up to the idea that they've been duped because they're currently getting duped, right? Yeah. They're currently getting fired. They're watching their trusted institutions collapse. They're watching a bunch of fucking psychos running around with chainsaws on the stage telling everybody it's going to hurt and you'll like it, it's good for you, and this is what you voted for, right? That's the magic trick to me in all this, Laura.
It is, and it's actually kind of scary, but I think we owe it to ourselves to figure out what our role is in pushing back. And I think you're right. I think people come off of social media because it's this toxic place, and I'm like, hell to the no. I'm going to lean in more. You don't actually fix things by retreating. You fix things by moving forward. You fix things by having more conversations. You fix things by and some of the conversations are going to be difficult, and people are not going to like you, and that's going to be okay. We're all going to get through this, but we got to start having some real hard conversations about what the future of our province is, what the future of our country is, and quite frankly, what the future of the globe is, because none of these things happen in isolation, right? Like there is no magical border that keeps things out. It's going to infiltrate into here. So what is it that we're willing to do, and what is it that we're willing to push back on? And I think there's this real kind of push right now, like people are waking up and saying, well, wait a minute, I voted for this, but I didn't really vote for this. I'm like, well, yeah, you did. And so now what are we going to do? And I think, that's where I have a little bit of experience. In June 2022, Ford came in the second time, and I was like, oh, for the love of, here we are again. And, he ran on a slogan of working for workers. With less than 6 months in his term, he literally tried to strip the, fundamental charter rights away from workers by imposing a contract using the notwithstanding clause. And it didn't go well for him.
Yeah, I was at that protest, Queen's Park.
Right?
Yeah.
And, I keep thinking to myself, okay, didn't think I would have to do this twice in one lifetime. I really, in November 2022, when I led that illegal strike, I was like, okay, this is my, and I can remember, like, how do you know you're making history when you're actually in the midst of it? Like, how do you know? But now I'm starting to realize that, oh, no. Like, whatever's going to happen tomorrow is going to happen tomorrow. That's just one day. What we as people in Ontario need to do is figure out what we are going to do to hold every single damn politician to account. Because that's what we do really, really badly, is we get all this hoopla heading into an election, and then they get in there and we all go, oh, okay, this is what we got. No, we're actually going to have to keep them. They work for us, right? And also hold them accountable. If the person who is supposed to be working for you is not doing what you want them to do, then you need to actually do things. And it's not just going to be petitions, and it's not just going to be sternly worded letters and, selfies. It's going to be us pushing back. And I think that's what you're starting to see in the States. I mean, unfortunately, a little bit too late, right? Like, God, if they only had woken up before. the election happened, but hindsight's always 2020. But you're seeing groups of people coming together, and they're actually making significant plans. And I don't know if you saw, like, Jasmine Crockett yesterday. Like, when I grew up, I want to be her.
Oh, Jasmine Crockett. When it was like,
Yeah.
do you have anything
Anything you
to
want to
say
say to
Elon Musk?
Elon?
Fuck off.
I want to be Jasmine when I grow up. Like, can I please? Because I'm like, yes, that's
You can be the
kind
Canadian
of
version.
spirit.
You can be the
Perfect.
Canadian version.
But that's the kind of spirit that we need. Is, yeah, okay, so now you're here. And this is what I keep saying to people is, we don't actually need to give Ford a bigger majority. What we need to do is chip away at it so that he is met with so much opposition every single time he tries to make any sort of statement in one of the 12 days that he, decides that he's going to show up for work. But we also have to be very careful, because there are a lot of things that are going to be coming up. And we have to also figure out, if Ford isn't going to be there, because I'm not sure that this man's going to make it through the whole 4 years, who is in waiting?
Mm-hmm.
And who are we going to be dealing with next? And what are we going to do about that? Because it's all good and dandy to say, oh yeah, he's a folksy, kind of a doofus, blah, blah, blah. Like, we all know that. But who is in the wings after him? And are we ready to fight back on that person too?
Wise words. You're right. We laughed when Aaron O'Toole left. We're like, yeah, get rid of Aaron O'Toole. Pierre Poilievre comes in.
Andrew Scheer.
Andrew Scheer. Yeah. Oh, there you go. And then we laughed when Jason Kenney got the boot, and he's like, heads up, the person next is going to be worse. Danielle Smith. She's going through some stuff right now. I want to get to a personal account. You represent a bunch of first responders and healthcare workers, correct?
Yeah. We
unions?
represent 1 million workers and 54 unions. So when I think about first responders, when I think about healthcare workers, you're looking at ONA, CUPE, OPSU, SEIU. There's a smattering in steel as well. There's a few in different places, but yeah, a significant amount of people who are keeping us alive.
Yeah, and worked tirelessly through COVID and had their wages capped by Bill 124. I want to talk about that in a second. But I got an email or a DM from a doctor, an ER doctor. His name's Dr. Raghu Venugopal. Just a great guy.
Yeah.
Here's what he said, and I want to read this to you. Dean, I've done all I can in this election to talk about healthcare, ERs in my limited capacity on different news outlets, stations, Ottawa, Citizen, Twitter, Healthy Debate. On the eve of the election, can I be honest with you? It doesn't appear that people care.
Yeah.
In remote and rural Ontario, Ford is blasting through. Rural and remote Ontario, his healthcare is almost done, but they keep voting for Ford, predictably. I don't care who our premier is. I do care about seeing people like I saw all night last night on EMS stretchers, because we have no beds.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit, if you can, because I think that this is the endemic portion of the pandemic, which is Doug Ford and his progressive conservative government. Talk for a little bit about what you're hearing from your union members in healthcare and first responders, and talk a little bit, if you can, about what Doug Ford continues to do to those people as they try and save our lives, while, and I'm going to borrow from a phrase earlier, while he grin fucks people and tells everybody how much he loves nurses.
Yeah. Well, listen, the first thing that I think we need to remember is, when people show you who they are, we have to believe them. And I always believe workers. Always. And so when workers are telling us that their life is shit, when they're telling us that their working conditions is shit, when they're telling us that they are, every day convincing themselves to go to work, right? Because that's what they're doing, right? They're convincing themselves every day to go to work because they have this desire to help people. And what we do in response is to literally vote for somebody who has been beating them. Like, that's what we're doing, is we are literally voting in their abuser.
Hostage.
That's it.
It's Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah,
right?
It is Stockholm syndrome, right? And so, when we think about it, like, my favorite thing right now is Sylvia Jones going out and talking, and Patrice Barnes did it the other day. Oh, here's all the money that we're putting into healthcare. No, all you're doing is building hospitals. That's not actually putting money into healthcare. That's putting in a building, right? And so it drives me literally around the bend, because there is this misunderstanding of how things happen. There are different accounts that happen. There are different budgets, and there's an operational budget that has been seeing cuts upon cuts, upon cuts, upon cuts. And that operational budget is the thing that actually pays for the stuff that you and I, when we have to go to a hospital, God forbid, receive. Whether that be somebody registering you, whether that be the triage, whether that be the nurse, whether that be the MRI, whether that be the bandage, like even the toilet paper that you use, that's all operational funding. And that is where this government is not investing money. As a matter of fact, that is where this government has put Ontario at the lowest rate in all of Canada. We spend the least is all of Canada. And the reason is because it doesn't sound good. It just looks really good to talk about these brand new fancy dancy buildings that you're building. But for the love of God, the reason why there are no beds is because you can't just put in a stretcher. You actually have to assign a nurse to care for the patient that is on that bed. And that was one of the things that I thought ONA did so well, the Ontario Nurses Association. They have been asking for nurse to patient ratios. This is not a hard concept. It's saying we believe that there needs to be X amount of nurses for X amount of patients. Okay, tell me what's wrong with that. Well, what's wrong with that is that the government of Ontario, Ford is saying, no, we don't want that. He doesn't want that because it means that he's going to have to invest in people. And that's not going to make his developer friends rich, right? That's not going to help him privatize healthcare.
Well, those are the guys that are building his hospitals where no one can work because there's no one to staff them, by the way.
There's no one to staff them. And listen, I just had surgery 2 weeks ago. And I will tell you, those people, are doing the work of God. I mean, like they are tired, they are overwhelmed, they are
underappreciated,
underpaid.
Yeah.
And it's everyone. It's those doctors, those nurses. It's also the healthcare workers. I keep reminding people that person who cleans the OR is just as important as the surgeon that's performing the surgery. Because if nobody's cleaning the damn OR, you're not getting surgery. Right? Like these people are all really, really important. But this government doesn't care about people. This government cares about looking good. This government, look at the big hospital that we have. Look at this, look at that. But we have, it's shells.
Trumpian in essence, right? It's all performative. It's ego. It's, I don't care about you. I care what you think I'm doing, right?
And let's be clear. You want to build these beautiful buildings. You want to build these state-of-the-art places. Because if I want to privatize healthcare, I am not going to attract people to come to set up the shop in dilapidated buildings. They want the best of the best. So we literally are paying for somebody to make profit off of our buildings.
Yeah, but he does that with our DMVs too, right? He did it with the booze. It's the same playbook, right?
It's the same playbook, and I keep reminding people of that. Is like when Sylvia Jones is standing up there and saying, "Look at this great hospital that we've built." She's building it because someone like Galen has figured out how he can, have Shoppers Drug Mart hip surgery, right? That's what he's done, and he doesn't want the 75-year-old operating theater. He wants the best theater.
But could you use your optimum points for knee replacement? And you can go in and get your knee replaced, use your optimum points, walk out with a bag of Cadbury eggs.
On Seniors Day, yes. That will be, when it's important. And that's the kind of thing that I got laughing about when he was saying, oh, well, we're now putting all this money in, so everyone is going to have a family doctor in the next 4 years. You've had friggin' 7. You didn't do anything about it. But if you note the language, he didn't say that everyone's going to have a family doctor. He said that everyone would have access to a primary care center. I'm not sure that's not aisle 7 of Shoppers Drug Mart.
It is.
I really don't.
It is. You can get a doctor's appointment just talking to the pharmacist now. Which I get that. But I mean, these are, again, how do you do it and who's getting rich off of it? It's all of his friends. And how do you do it? He just tells people he's going to destroy healthcare because while we have to give people access, and then he continues to carve access. On that note, you mentioned the nurse to patient ratio. If I'm to understand that Ontario is dead last by a country mile when it comes to nurse and patient ratio. Is that right?
Yeah. So there are places like BC and California where they actually have legislated nurse to patient ratios, and the healthcare outcomes are so much better. Why? Because we're providing the right type of care for the patients. Shocker. And it actually saves money, right? Because people are getting healthier, they're, transitioning out, etc. They don't want to do it here. It has been a bill on the floor. Ford actually turned it down. So when he says he's working for workers, when he says that he cares, you just have to look at what he's done. Sweet fuck all when it comes to
Words,
this.
not works, right?
Yeah.
Works,
Right.
not words. Like you
Well,
bring that point up about the performative nature of a guy like Donald Trump, or the performative nature of someone like Doug Ford. He stands there and convinces people that he's for the workers, he's for the
yes.
nurses. And then he doesn't answer any questions about any of the carnage he's delivered for the past 7 years, or refuses to actually be interviewed about a nurse to patient ratio, which, to your point, are the works. The words don't matter. I mean, they're all lies. We know they're all lies. But to your point, look at the works and you can legitimately see how much disdain Doug Ford has for the human beings in this province.
Absolutely. There's an old suffragette motto called deeds, not words.
Yeah.
And I think like deeds, not words, it needs to come back. I mean, it's how women got the darn vote. It's probably what we need to like lean into a bit here. Is like we have to start, because back then, women were saying, yeah, you tell us that we have all of these things, but there's nothing that we can show for it, kind of thing. And I really want to encourage people to think that again. Like, instead of being told what people are doing for you, actually show me. Because nobody so far has actually shown me anything where we are better off after 7 years of Ford.
So I'm a fan of Stoic philosophy. And the one thing that Marcus Aurelius used to talk about all the time was don't talk about your philosophy, be about your philosophy. Be that person. Because your philosophy coming out of your mouth matters not if it's not coming out of your actions, if it's not part of who you are. And that is truly the test of character, has been for thousands of years. Is what you say and what you do, are they syncretic? Do they go together? Because if you do, and if they are, then you're dealing with a good human being, right? I cannot count, maybe you can, I can't, how many receipts and examples I have of Doug Ford's words not just not matching his works, but being on the other side of the fucking planet according to his works.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And even when he does something, like I always say, a broken watch is right twice a day. Even when this magical planets align and he does do something that kind of looks like maybe he's done the right thing, like the pandemic. I always go back to that when people are like, oh, he was so great during the pandemic. Honest to goodness, like a trained monkey could have got us through the pandemic. Like you just had to follow advice of science. Like,
well, and to your point, like, did you take anything any government said? I talked to my physician and I judged my behavior according to the community and what was best for me and my family. I didn't need anybody to tell me to lock down. I didn't need anybody to tell me a mask. I observed common sense rules. I was mindful of other people. I certainly didn't take any fucking pandemic advice from Doug Ford. So when someone's like, he got us through the pandemic, or he was this, or he was that, I'm like, well, dude, really?
We got ourselves through the pandemic.
We did it ourselves. Yes.
Like it's in spite of, not because of, right?
Yeah.
And, and somebody will say to me, oh, well, look at how well education workers are now paid compared to, yes, because they literally fought Doug Ford, like went on strike illegally, people. Like, I understand that it doesn't happen very often, but like, yeah, they fought and they won. That's how they got that. So like, it's not like anything that he does. When he does do something right, it's because he's been forced, not because he actually has the desire to make this province better.
There's works, and then there's complete inaction. And I want to talk about that real briefly because I put out a video which came across my desk, if you will, of somebody in his party, and we're all very aware of all the reports of quid pro quos and backroom dealings and emails and missing cell phones when it comes to the Greenbelt and several other insider deals with Doug Ford, his RCMP investigation, which is looking into this kind of thing. But this video bothered me. There's a woman that used to be Doug Ford's parliamentary assistant, a guy named Lauren Coe. Used to be his EA, his executive assistant. And a good EA is basically the president of your company. I'm just letting people know that. So this woman's name is Sarah Bokhari, and she is a progressive conservative handpicked by Doug Ford, a loyalist handpicked by Doug Ford, to be the representative in Hamilton Center. Hamilton's a very big city here in Ontario. It's hardworking, beautiful, world-class, working-class people, home to a lot of different unions, obviously, because of the steel industry, et cetera, et cetera. But she's running to be in Doug Ford's caucus, part of Parliament for the Progressive Conservative Party. So this video came across my desk, and I want to get your thoughts on it because I find it to be concerning, in which Miss Bokhari allegedly is leaving a voicemail for a constituent. And the voicemail is in relation to what I understand to be the constituent asking for help on a file, which includes a land deal and some possibly rezoning. She's leaving this gentleman a message, or female, no idea who the recipient is at this point, this female a message. And the message that she's leaving isn't just concerning.
No.
But if I'm listening to this and I can speak the language, it's transcribed. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it. If I'm listening to this, I'm like, that sounds a lot like extortion to me. Let's listen to this and play it back together if we can.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। आपकी फाइल जब तक मूव नहीं होएगी, जब तक मुझे मेरा डोनेशन नहीं मिलता, मेरे से क्लेवर कोई ना प्ले करे। आई एम वेरी वेल कनेक्टेड, पहले से बता रही हूँ। और मुझे बिल्कुल अच्छा नहीं लगा जिस तरह आप मुझे डील करें कि $100 दे दें, 50 दे दें या 50 सेंट्स दे दें। ये मैं फकीर नहीं हूँ, ये मैं बहुत बड़ी बड़ी डील्स कराती हूँ। तो मुझे बिल्कुल अच्छा नहीं लगा। आपने फिर मेरी इंसल्ट की है। ये आपकी फाइल मूव नहीं होगी सिटी प्लानर पे जब तक आप मेरा डोनेशन मुझे नहीं।
All right. So that is in a different language. I believe it's Farsi. I could be wrong. And I got a couple screenshots. I'll explain to you what Miss Bokhari is saying in the best possible way, where she's saying, "Hi, your file will not be removed, will not be moved until I receive my donation." Let me rephrase that. Your file will not be moved until I receive my donation, she says on this voicemail. She then goes on to say, "Do not try to be clever. I am very well connected, as I have told you before." And then she said, "Whether it is giving me $100, 50 rupees, or 50 cents, I want my donation," basically paraphrasing, "and you will not get any help with this until you pay me."
Mm-hmm.
I'd like your thoughts.
Well, listen, I don't know the context either, right? When I first saw this, I was like, oh, imagine that. Like, I mean, it's sad that that's kind of my first reaction. Like, go figure. But I think,
Yeah, usually that's explosive, but in Doug Ford's Ontario, you're like, oh, it's Tuesday.
right? Like, and imagine, and the sun is out. Like, but
Yeah.
I think and that's actually really friggin' sad, because that tells me that we have gotten to this place where corruption in Ontario is becoming the norm. And, I mentioned this to a lot of people as we were heading into this election, and people were all talking about the corruption of Ford. They just elected a convicted felon in the United States. I'm not sure if corruption if we're at that point where corruption is suddenly something that should remove you from office, because apparently we actually put people there this way. And I think that is a real big problem, it's festering. And so when I saw this, I was like, yeah, this does not surprise me. And then, you have the lawsuit that just came out around the Greenbelt with, staffers there. And then I think back that, like, in 2018, if people remember, Kathleen Wynne lost a government on a scandal that was far less than this. And people still talk about the gas plants. And I agree, the gas plants
Someone
were
went
not a
to
good
jail
thing.
for it.
Someone went to jail
erasing
for
emails.
it. And
Yeah.
here we are. Here we are in Ontario now. Erase it, crack it, sell your phone, erase your phone. Nothing seems to matter anymore. And it just kind of makes me giggle, because I'm like, if you say something about the NDP, somebody brings up Bob Rae. And if you say something about the Liberals, somebody brings up the gas plant scandal. And yet it is allowed to just run rampant right now. And if this is wrong, if the take on here is incorrect, then why aren't the PCs saying something?
Not a word about that voicemail. Nothing.
Right? So that to me is like, oh, like hear no evil, speak no evil, say no evil. Like, what are we doing here? Like, I need to understand this. And I think like that to me is really, 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 really concerning is, and it's because there's two pieces to this. First of all, if this person doesn't get elected, okay, whatever. But this person should not be allowed to even work in our civil service if this is what they're doing.
Not only should they not be allowed to work, allegedly that voicemail was recorded 16 to 18 months ago, right? 16 to 18 months, so over a year. Not only is it over a year old, has he had time to do something about this, but he's elevated her and asked her to run for him. And so, to your point, does corruption even matter anymore? I mean, down to the South, to your point, 34-time felon and an adjudicated rapist as the president of the United States, which normally would have been disqualifying in my lifetime. But it's almost as if that person aligns with your ideology, specifically on the conservative side of the equation, the extreme conservative side of the equation, it doesn't matter what you do. No. Corruption is just a byproduct of what it is. And to your point, we've accepted it. Like, that's what really bothers me too.
It's we're desensitized to it. And I think that is super problematic, is like we have desensitized ourselves to the fact that in our positions, and I'm an elected official, I have no job security, right? I go up for election every 2 years. My integrity is my number one asset. Saying what I'm, doing what I say I'm going to do, following through, being held accountable, being able to be approached, all of these things are key in what I do. And I'm not anywhere near, the big cheese place that we're in when we're talking about provincial or federal elections. But I think like we need to hold our elected officials to account. And that, and it's just so silly. You've got Todd McCarthy, saying, oh, these videos are AI.
Did you see that? Did you see that?
Like, dude, it's not AI. Like, what? You've got the PC candidate up in Sault Ste. Marie trying to say that he's lived there. And everybody in Sault Ste. Marie is like, I've never seen you. I don't know if you've heard of you. And I'm like, I don't know if you've been to Sault Ste. Marie. I spend a lot of time in the north. I go up and visit up there.
I have.
I'm an outsider. I know I'm an outsider. I live in Belleville. We know when outsiders come in. Like, come on, buddy. Like, you can't just pretend that you live somewhere. And I think like these are the things. And when you confront them, it's like we suddenly, the audacity we have.
You just get called woke.
Yes. Well, you know what?
To
quote Jane Fonda, woke just means that you give a damn about people. So shall we all be woke?
The guy that I get a kick out of, outside of Miss Bukhari and her demand for a donation to work on a file, which is her fucking job.
50 cents.
Way, straight pipe. Yeah. Or 50 rupees, whatever you got. Straight pipe. She was a straight line to Doug Ford. So there's no way he's not knowing about this stuff. But the candidate that makes me laugh the hardest is this guy named Jerry Ouellette. Have you heard of this guy? He's out in Oshawa.
Yes, the Century 21 blazer, yes.
He looks like an extra from Starsky and Hutch. He's got the big duster. And I did a little research into this guy because there are some ridings up for grabs. In Oshawa, if you're smart, you're not voting for this guy. He spent the last previous 20 years prior to getting into real estate. Politics and real estate seem to be the two things that failures love to do when they're done failing. But Jerry Ouellette has spent years going to anti-LGBTQ, anti-same-sex rallies. And a priest recently was like, hey, if you need someone to give you the straight goods on why gay people shouldn't get married, it's my man, Jerry Ouellette. He's running for Doug Ford in Oshawa.
Yeah. And this is, it's like who you surround yourself with, right? Like it's really who you surround yourself with. And I think, listen, I can't imagine what it is like running for a provincial office, like having, because people have asked me, like, are you going to run? I'm like, oh my God, there's no way I could pass vetting. Like the things that I've said.
Why? What do you know? What do you do you have some grease? Give me some grease. Give me some
No.
grease
I just think to myself, like, hey, like I've led an illegal strike. In some places that would be like, oh, like you know, but I think it must be very hard to run as a candidate. And I think that's like the one thing that I want to say is that we should really in the province of Ontario and in Canada really see people who are running for office That's taking a big chance, and they should be commended, right? Putting yourself out there, but we should be holding them to a higher level, right? These are people who are going to be representing us. And so, yeah, there has to be some vetting, and you hear it all the time. Oh, well, the vetting process is too difficult. I don't know. I think we want to make sure that we're vetting people properly. And with someone like, Jerry Olet, I'm like, he feeds into what we've seen in Durham. I don't know if people are following in Durham. There is a huge, parents group out in Durham that constantly is doing anti-2S LGBTQ plus. They kind of picked up where the convoy
is there?
left
It's like
off.
it's the parental rights losers. Those guys. That
Yeah,
they're like,
there's
I
a
don't want
bunch
you
of them.
asking my kid about the bruises on his arms. Like that's.
Well, and
the
I'm
group.
just like, you know what? If you want to not be in a same-sex marriage, good for you. But then let everybody else do what the hell they want. Like, who are you to tell somebody else what they should do with their goddamn life?
These are the people that think that certain books in the library might turn their kids gay. So
yes, yeah. Well, I have yet to see somebody turn into a frog after reading a book on frogs. So
that's
like,
the crowd and they love Doug Ford, by the way. But and that's the crowd. Like if someone said to me, "Hey, Dean, what are your takeaways from the past 4 years about some of your biggest surprises?" I say this with zero respect for these people too. Like, we all do respect. I say this with zero respect for any of these people. It's the crowd that wants to prevent their child from having a voice, reading a book, educating themselves for fear they might end up gay.
I guess in that theory, we shouldn't let kids read books on conservatives because they might end up conservatives. I mean, hey, like these are the things that are going to happen. I think, but again, it goes back to that scarcity mindset. I think like following the pandemic, people just really were like, what's in it for me? What can I get? And they're clamoring. Like, that's what I think people keep forgetting about the pandemic is that forced isolation that we were in, it screwed up a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And people were really looking and clamoring for where they belong. Mm-hmm. Who are my people? And there are really bad people out there who will use that opportunity, that will use that, lowered, mental state and just seize on it, right? Mm-hmm. And we've seen it throughout history. Like, this is not new. This is like, it happens all the time. But the thing that really bothers me about the last 4 years is typically after a major problem, like a global pandemic, you see actually improvements to the public service structure. So for instance, public health came into play after the pandemic in 1919. Mm-hmm. Like, we just didn't do that this time. I guess we just thought we didn't have to. I don't know.
We went backwards, right?
We went backwards. And I think that's what really worries me is like, there is this real need and desire for people to belong to a community. And that's great as long as you have people who are doing it with the best intentions. But when you have people who want to actually seize upon this and use it to promote like nefarious things, which is really what's happening, mm-hmm. This is where you end up here. And I think that is so problematic because I think, they just truthfully, don't know. They're seeking something and there's somebody who's filling that cup for them, but it's being filled with poison.
So well said, Laura. Thank you. I appreciate that. And again, I referenced that Civil War TED Talk with Barbara Walter Walters.
You might have done too.
Barbara F. Walter. And it was fascinating because it's the only way. And this is all civil wars are started by the former power, right? They're all started by the outgoing or out group that used to have the majority of power. What they do is they attach grievance to people's core beliefs. And they tell people that I'm going to attach, you're going to come with me. I'm going to come with you. You can stop thinking because we're going to fight them. But if we don't do this, your life is going to be terrible. It's going to be awful. And then they add, remember the utopia you used to live in back when we were in charge, which by the way, never existed.
Never existed. Yeah.
You need to give us that agency. And until the demographics change in Canada to the point where, all of us go, okay, like demographics and common sense, and of course, waking up. Until those demographics change enough to the point where we can say to each other, wait a second, there's 1,000 times more of us than there is of them. Number one. And number two, we don't need to be afraid and we don't need to be complacent and we don't have to just worry about ourselves. We can vote for the best interest of the marginalized. That's how I vote. I vote and I give my power to people who need it the most. And it's amazing what happens when that happens. Because as you point out, there's those divergent things after the pandemic. 1919, we get public health because of that. 2022, 2023, we go backwards. And we're going to do the same thing. There's a fork in the road that is coming.
Yes.
Because America is no longer democracy. It's called an anocracy. It's kind of the middle ground between democracy and a dictatorship, where you got some really strong assholes that are trying to pretend that they're giving you a democratic ideal. They're not.
Yeah.
And Canada's not far behind. But we're at that fork in the road, that moment in history right now. And in a microcosm, that's what this Ontario election is all about, is how do you motivate 1 million members of the Ontario Labor Federation? How do you motivate, 400,000 or 500,000 people in this group? How do you tell all these other people that they're being lied to? And as a strategy, and as the president of the Ontario Labor Federation, how do you do that? Like, what is the strategy of OFL with their constituents, and writ large, the rest of this province, when it comes to saying, guys, we're in this for you. This is what they're doing. How do you educate people and get people up to speed a whole lot faster than tomorrow? Because I'm afraid he's going to win again.
Listen, that's one of the things that I've actually turned my mind to is, like, right now, we have to talk about how we're going to lead 4 years forward. This isn't going to be just about what happens tomorrow. This is going to be about what do we need to do 4 years forward? Because what is happening right now is not sustainable, right? These never-ending promises, these never-ending kind of empty kind of, oh, look at all the things. These things are not sustainable, and it's going to actually, and we've seen it, right? We're at a higher deficit now than we were 7 years ago because it's not sustainable what he's doing. So we actually have to think about what we're going to do 4 years forward. And it's going to require a lot of really hard conversations and a lot of mapping and talking about, what do we need to do? But the one thing that we need to do is get out of our damn friggin' bubbles, right? Like, workers are holistic beings. They aren't just their job, right? So, like, yes, there are steel workers that go to, Algoma Steel. They put in their 8 hours, 10 hours, and then, but they also are fathers and mothers and aunties and uncles and grandfathers and grandmothers and brothers and sisters and cousins. They play on, beer league hockey teams, or belong to wine clubs, or take their kids to soccer or football or whatever.
You're describing my people. You're describing my people right now. Yeah.
Like, that's who they are. They are holistic beings. And what we need to do is start tapping into them in all areas of their life, because those things matter. So you have to start getting out. Like, I said at the beginning, and I'll say it again, and unfortunately 28 days is not enough time to change move minds. This election was never going to be won in a boardroom. It was going to be won at a kitchen table. And that's what we actually need to start doing, is talking at those kitchen tables, talking to people where they are at, right? And listening, for the love of all that is holy. Like, just stop for a minute and hear what people are saying. Because when I'm talking and listening to people, it's not that they're voting for Ford. Again, I'll say they're just voting in absence of what else to do, right? And this is kind of their mindset. And so I think, that's a lot of what we're going to be doing for the next 4 years, is building that ability to hold this government accountable, because quite frankly, they're going to need that. But we also are going to have to start building workers, because the threat is on our doorsteps. And
it's here. It's in the house. It's not even a doorstep. They just busted the front door open, and they're making a mess of the foyer.
The call is coming from inside the house, right? Yeah. And I think that, we need to remember that workers, we're the fodder in this shit, right? Like, we are not elites. We are going to be the fodder. And so we have to decide, and you're right, there are so many more of us than there are of them, but we've got to figure out what we're going to do, because quite frankly, I do believe that we are on the cusp of something extreme. And, what we decide to do, how we decide to deal with it, is really going to be what matters right now. And for me, that means getting out and talking to people where they are, getting out and talking to people where they are, talking about what's making them tick, talking about how do we move beyond, because I think the days of business unionism, the days of kind of like this, it's not working anymore. It has to be for the workers, by the workers. And I think once we start building that, and we're trying, we already are, we're seeing it, and we're seeing we're seeing in the world of negotiations, things are going, but now we also need to like start putting that into the world in general, and how can workers connect together. This isn't about an us versus them. This is about all of us versus the few.
Laura Walton, president of the Ontario Labour Federation, is my guest. Where can people get a hold of you if they have any questions or want to book you for an interview, because you make so much sense? It's so awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. Listen, you can reach out to us. OFL.ca, is our website. Info@OFL.ca is a really easy place to get, easy to remember, easy to get a hold of us. I'm also Walton Mum on Twitter. Or X, or whatever the hell we call that cesspool that I still keep living in. Like, I don't know.
You know what? I'll tell you something. I recently branched out onto Blue Sky. What a change. What a refreshing change. Just got on Substack. It's incredible what Substack is. You can publish it, social media. It's awesome. You can monetize. I love it. You can join me there as well. Dean Blundell on both. But I can't quit Twitter. It's just, it's too, I mean, I don't mind mucking it around a little bit. I'm one of those guys. It's like, when everybody was leaving Twitter, like, this is my last day on Twitter. I'm like, where are you going? This is awesome. I love a good fight.
Well, and when everybody was doing that, I was like, it's not an airport. You don't need to announce your departure. But like
they were so important that if they left, they're warning everybody, listen, right? I'm leaving because I'm so much better. The place is going to collapse when I leave. I just wanted to say goodbye before it does.
The thing, it's kind of like when I watched Americans in TikTok, when they thought TikTok was going and they all started doing these confessions. I'm like, what are you doing? You Wonka doodles.
It's the greatest experience of my life. I've been able to feed my family and buy 2 horses.
Exactly. I do feel that Twitter is a bit like a sugar addiction for me, and that if I stop, I'm going to have a headache, but I'm just going to go back to it because it's just part of my life. But Twitter has been, my rule of thumb on Twitter is that my piece is worth more than your ego. And I follow that rule religiously.
Yeah. You block? You like blocking?
Sometimes I block, but sometimes I don't block because I'm like, why am I blocking you? That's what you want. You want to be able to say, this bitch blocked me. I'm like, oh, fuck, I don't care enough about you to block you.
And that's the thing. That's what I love, is getting a rise out of people. And I limit my replies, and I'll tell you why I do it. Because if you're that mad about it and you want to say something, I'm going to get the lift out of it. So you're going to have to retweet it. You're not gonna live in the subtweets. You're not gonna live in the replies. No. You're gonna send it to everybody on your list.
You're gonna quote me. You're gonna do everything, and I love it. And I just am always like, and when I'm talking to people, I'm always like, be careful of who you're giving attention to, because you don't have to respond to everything. Not everything is worthy, and that's why I say my piece is worth more than your ego. But yeah, on Facebook, I keep trying to do TikTok. I don't know. I'm not there yet. I don't know if I'm ever going to be there yet.
No offense, it's because you're not a 6th grader. That's
no, I'm not. I mean, it has its moments, and I see some value in it. But I think, nothing is going to take away from just getting out and talking to people in general, face to face. And I think that is really super key. I am super blessed with the following that I have, but I built it talking like I talk to you right now. And it's important for me to be out in front of people and talking to people. I never want to lose that. And I think, whoever is successful tomorrow, right? And I say this to all 124 soon to be MPPs. The way that we fix the province of Ontario is by actually being accountable to the people of Ontario. And you have to understand who employs you. Every single day, I wake up and remember that there are 1 million people who have put their faith in me to do my job, and I am accountable to them. And if every day when I go to bed, I hope that I have made those people proud. And I think for my message to all 124 soon-to-be MPPs, every day you have to make the people of Ontario proud that they put you there. And if you can't do that, then this isn't the gig for you. Because we are accountable. We should be accountable, and we are beholden to the people who elect us, and that's the way it should be.
Well, with that, I'll let you have the last word. Well said. Thank you, Laura. Really nice to finally meet you.
Yes.
Continue the great work for the people of Ontario and the Ontario Labour Federation. I hope you'll come back.
I will come back. You let me know whenever. This was my original career, was in radio, so I always.
Oh, was it really?
I feel like I get to go back. Yeah.
Yeah, mine too.
I worked for the Bear. Yes, I used to listen to you faithfully. In Ottawa.
You did? Oh, you're
kidding. 106.9. Yeah.
Oh, you're kidding. Did you do mornings, afternoons? What'd you do?
No, I actually did sales
Oh,
and
you're in sales.
copy. Yeah, and so Wendy
Yeah.
Daniels and I used to travel around all over the place doing bear bashes.
Oh, okay. I had no idea. So you're in sales. Yeah, you're very well spoken.
Yeah,
Yeah, I get that. Yeah,
back in the day when I was
yeah.
working, I worked in a radio station in Cornwall. We would literally sell the ad, write the
Yeah.
copy, and voice the ad because it was so small.
Oh, yeah. I have gone on sales calls. My original start in radio was in Fort McMurray. You go on a sales call, you come back, you write the commercial, you go and record the commercial, then you put it on a cart, and then you put it in the cart run, and everybo's happy. Like that was what I used to do. Then my radio career went in a different direction. I started doing mornings, and I created a bit of a stir in the country, and then that was the end of it.
We were laughing because the other day I was doing radio commercials for the election. And I always wanted to do it in one take because when I went to college for radio, we did reel to reel, and I hated splicing. So
Oh, do you remember that with the little chalk thing and the tape? Yeah.
Hated it.
Oh, yeah.
So I learned.
That's back in the day. We're dating ourselves here, where you're like, we used to take out a razor and we used to cut the tape and then we tape it together, and that would be your edit.
And and so they were laughing at me because I was doing these multiple, and I would do it in one take, and I'm like, because I never wanted to do more than one. I never wanted to edit, so I learned how to do my commercials in one take, so that I would never have to edit. It was my workaround because I was lazy. That was one take, Laura. Yeah, it was 14 commercials, 14 takes. That was my goal that day.
See, and I should have known you were in radio. I should have known that you had a background in it because you're like me. You don't like dead air, right? And then this conversation has been one of the most automatic conversations I've had with anybody in a podcast. And I thought it was just my excellence.
It is your excellence.
Turns out it's your excellence too.
We're not taking away from your excellence today, Dean. Let's be clear. Not taking away from it at all.
Well, this is great to meet somebody who has the same affliction for the greatest business that is no longer. So thank you.
Actually, Loyalist College, it's gone. There is no more radio.
No radio program? Yeah, the same thing at Ryerson. They just dumped theirs. I think Centennial just dumped theirs as well. And I had someone call me from the radio program this year, and they're like, "Hey, would you be?" And I can't remember what school it was. It doesn't matter. Maybe George Brown. Who knows? And they're like, "Hey, would you be interested in coming and talk to the radio class?" I'm like, "What? There's a radio school?"
But there's like somebody, because I often get asked to go and train people to do media training, and I'm like, this is where we learned how to do it. Like,
oh yeah. But that was the best. That was the best time ever. It was like you could. This is why I love the business of radio, right? Like it was so you only got information from. Again, this is part of our problem. You only got information from one of three sources. You got it from the newspaper, the television, or the radio. That was it. That's all you got. So all you kids sitting there going, that must have sucked. We didn't know any different. We still had phones attached to the walls with 40-foot cords. That's how we grew up, right? So yeah, no, that was the best. And so if you were on the radio, you were somebody back then. Now, if you're on the radio, people are like, what is it you do? That still exists, and it's a shame because it's a beautiful business.
Actually, I'm heading on to do a roundtable on an AM radio station on Monday. I still go back to my original radio station back at CJBQ and Mix 97 in Belleville.
Oh, you do?
I go back. Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, that's where Todd Smith is from.
Oh, is this the guy that was running around telling everybody that all the terrible videos that you see of his premiere are all
that's
AI?
Todd McCarthy, but Todd Smith was the MPP from the Bay of Quinte area. I used to work with him. Yeah. He was my news director when I was interning. Okay. He mishandled the autism portfolio. He then was the energy minister, and he is the one that on the day of Ford Fest resigned.
Was he too drunk? Did he party too hard?
He has a really good job at Can Do now, so...
It never ends.
The grift is endless. That's what you need to remember.
Yes,
already, let me know when you need from me. I'm happy to join you at any time.
Laura, I'm going to have you back very soon. Thank you very much. And I'll talk to you soon. All right. Take care. There you go. Laura Walton. She's the president of the Ontario Labor Federation. Firecracker. Smart human. So we need more smart humans speaking up. For some reason, it's become in vogue for the dumb ones to say shit. It's crazy. It's the craziest time we live in. I'm from a school, we talked about the 40-foot cords. Back in those days when the phone had a cord and your TV was made of wood, dumb, angry people knew they were dumb and angry and they didn't talk. Then along comes the internet, chat rooms, Bitcoin. They all get this big resentment play, and here we are today. with Elon Musk, the world's biggest incel running things, literally globally running things, like Ready Player One. Anyway, thanks to Laura for being part of that. I really appreciated her time. The Ontario Labor Federation, check them out online. They do God's work when it comes to protecting workers, informing individuals and people what the human decision should be when it comes to elections, public policy, that kind of stuff. And they really do work to protect workers who are always taken advantage of by the elites. Always, always, always. So I appreciate that. And again, tomorrow, vote. Ontario, if you're listening to this, end of the podcast, brought to you by our friends at Field Trip Health. Go to fieldtriphealth.ca. I'll give them another pump at the end of this. Vote for character tomorrow. Don't vote for a party. And if you are going to vote for a party, just don't vote for Doug Ford's party. Please, on behalf of the province. I mean, how many more investigations do you want? How many more sorries do you need? How many more of your tax dollars do you want to go to his private roads project so we can get to the cottage faster? How many? How many more MPPs in waiting demanding fealty payments from constituents do you need to hear? How many more lost emails? How many more scrubbed hard drives? How many more missing cell phones and phone records? How many more lawsuits to hurt teachers, nurses, students? How many more do you need? I mean, I don't need any. So vote wisely tomorrow. Ontario, I love you. Thanks to our friends at Field Trip Health for making this possible. Field Trip Health, ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, medically supervised, as a matter of fact. And they're medically supervised because there's ketamine involved. Psychedelic-assisted therapy, psychedelics. They offer a convenient at-home ketamine therapy program. It allows you to receive care in the comfort of your own home. It's led by experienced nurses. Program ensures that you don't have to travel to the clinic to experience the benefits of ketamine therapy. What is ketamine-assisted therapy? Glad you asked, even though you didn't. It's life-changing, life-saving perspective. You sit in a chair, zero-G chair. You get administered ketamine in a dose that takes you out of that negative default pattern that we're all in if you suffer from depression, PTSD, and anxiety. Everybody knows it. It's that cage you put over your head where it's like, I don't even want to try today. Well, that's what ketamine does. Takes that away. Then you get busy unwrapping trauma. Trauma is the root cause for all psychopathy, whether it's addiction, whether it's your mental health, like depression, PTSD, anxiety, first episode, second episode, all the things that we go through. And I'm one of those guys that likes to talk about his mental health and having to go and find solutions for myself. And I have yet to find a solution that works for my friends, that works for myself, that works as fast and as long without the side effects of SSRIs as I have at fieldtriphealth.ca. Several locations around Canada. This is legal. Psychedelic-assisted therapy. They've got ketamine-assisted therapy for pain management, psychotherapy and counseling, MDMA therapy, neurofeedback therapy. They have everything that you need that isn't first line of defense like counseling or SSRIs. All of those things can work. But to be able to kind of understand yourself, you have to unwrap trauma, and you can't do it without the therapeutic portion. And some people never really get there because they're too afraid to talk about it, and that's the ketamine portion. I'm telling you, it'll change your life, and you can book a discovery call today with my friends at fieldtriphealth.ca. You choose them. Their approach is incredible. Their outcomes are phenomenal. 80% response rate for depression, sometimes within the first couple of hours. And then you've got 86% response rate for people that have alcohol and drug addiction. You've got all kinds of success rates when it comes to the MDMA-assisted therapy and psilocybin-assisted therapy. When I say all kinds, in some cases, MDMA therapy works for PTSD better than ketamine, and ketamine is breakthrough related right now. So if you're in Canada and you're tired, you want relief, and you want to get yourself back, you want to experience joy again today, and it's been robbed of you for quite some time because of the lives that we live to no fault of your own, because that's just life. Be courageous. Call my friends at fieldtriphealth.ca today, fieldtriphealth.ca/booking. Book your free appointment, book your discovery call. Someone will call you back within hours, and they will help try to figure out how you get better quicker, faster, and longer. That's what they do. Go to fieldtriphealth.ca. Thanks, everybody, for being part of the show. As mentioned earlier, you can get me on Substack, Dean Blundell on Substack. You can find me on Blue Sky as well. Same name, Dean Blundell. It's Dean Blundell on Twitter. Everything we do is at Crier Media. Go to crier.co for more details and check us out on YouTube. You can watch this video on YouTube. The lovely Laura and Doofus Dean. This entire thing, Crier Media YouTube channel. Go and sub there. You can go to Dean Blundell Show on YouTube as well. But please hit us up on Substack. That'd be great. Dean Blundell on Substack. You can check out everything we do. Podcast coming soon. Substack's awesome. Really like Substack. And I like the fact you hung out here with us for an hour. Ontario, Canada. Try to be good. Have a wonderful day. I will see you very, very soon. Bye now.